All right, now we're going to get ready to write our very first sketch, and we're all going to be programmers because we're going to write some code. Well, actually, we're going to do blocks, but I'll show you where you can see the code that gets written automatically. This is how we're going to wire up our very first circuit. Now, I'm going to have you plug one LED in and make sure the long lead is on the left, and I'm going to try to keep the long lead on the left for all of these, and I think I have them all that way as well, but that's going to be our positive, and then the short lead on the right, which is going to be our ground. So we want to go from pin 13, and we're going to plug that into the long lead, and then we're going to plug the short lead. We're going to use a resistor, and you only have one type of resistor, so go ahead and pull them apart from the little bandolier, and we're going to plug it into here and then down to ground. And then we're going to take a second wire, and we're going to plug in from ground anywhere along here over to the GND, or the ground pin on our Arduino. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I'm using red and black wires because that's kind of the normal coloring. You can use any color that you want. If you want to follow along and use the same colors, that's perfectly fine. But the color of the wire is not going to change anything. Now that we've seen the circuit, let's go ahead and wire that up on the breadboard. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is make sure you have your Arduino Uno unplugged. So make sure it's not plugged in when we're plugging things into our breadboard and Arduino. Otherwise, we can accidentally short them out. It's actually pretty easy to do. Those wires will kind of flop around and can easily connect to things they shouldn't. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to plug our LED in, and I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to put the long lead on the left, just like we talked about, and the short lead on the right. Now, it doesn't matter exactly which holes you plug it into, and it doesn't matter if you want to plug it into the top or the bottom. As long as you get the wiring correct, it doesn't matter where it's at. Then I'm going to take one of these resistors, and I'm going to plug that in on the short lead down to the ground, or the minus rail here on the bottom. And now I'm going to take my two wires. Now, I don't have a red wire, but I've got this orange wire, so I'm going to use that instead. And I'm going to plug that into pin 13. Let me make sure that's 13. And I'm going to plug that into the right-hand side of my LED. And then with the black wire, I'm going to plug it into ground, and I'm going to plug it into the negative rail here. And it can go into any one of these spots along the ground, the negative. But it's a short wire, so I'm going to put it all the way over there on the left. So there we go. That's our complete circuit. Let's go ahead and plug that in and see what happens. And it's blinking. So assuming you didn't change anything, the default sketch that's installed on these Arduinos is to blink pin 13. And yours might be a little bit different because I did tweak on mine. But if you plug that in and you're shocked that it was blinking, that is why. So by default, it goes ahead and blinks the LED on pin 13. And we didn't do anything to program that. But let's head over to the computer and let's program this so that we can do our own little blinky, and I'll show you what that sketch looks like. We're back in PictoBlocks, and I've got the blinky saved from previously that I showed, and I just want to take a minute and walk through this interface before we get too far down the road. So in the middle here is where we're going to put our components, or our sketch. On the left is going to be all of the different components that we have access to. Now, some of these we're not going to use. For example, at the very bottom here, there's some things that are very specific to the PictoBlocks platform that we just simply don't have access to. But that doesn't matter. What we're going to use is up towards the top. Now, these little guys here allow you to jump to that list, but you can also just scroll that entire list. So let's get started by putting together a quick little sketch. So click on the Arduino Uno to jump down to the Uno. Now, what we're going to do, and we'll always do this, is the very first thing we want to do is we want to drag this guy over. This says Arduino Uno starts up. And that's going to be the very beginning. So that's going to tell our sketch where we want to start. So go ahead and grab that and pull that over. Now, the next thing we want to do is the Arduino is just a big loop. It just goes over and over and over and over again, and then we do stuff inside that loop. So in order to tell it that we want to start that loop, we're going to click on the control box, which is going to take us up to the very, very, very top. And we're going to find this one that says forever. And we're going to drag that over, and we're going to attach that to the bottom of the Arduino starts. So yours should look like that. Go ahead and add that. This is going to be how almost all of our sketches start. It's very common to have the Arduino start up and then the forever. Now, in some sketches, we're going to put something in between those, and in others, we won't. For this one, we're not going to put anything in there. The next thing we want to do is we want to turn on digital pin 13, and that's where we plugged our LED in. So let's, again, click on the Arduino Uno to scroll down to that section, and you'll find this one. It's the fourth one down. It says set digital pin 13 output high. So let's grab that and drag that over and stick it under the forever. Okay, now we've got Arduino starts. We're going to loop forever. We're going to turn digital pin on high. Now, high means on, low means off. So when we want to turn our LED on, we want to set it to high, and then off is low. Now, if you click on 13, you'll see all of the pins available. 13 just happens to be the default. That also is where we plugged our LED in. So when you want to change that, which we don't right now, that's how you'll change that. So now what we want to do is we want to tell the Arduino to wait 1 second before we turn that LED off. So let's go back to control, all the way up to the very top. You'll find one that says wait 1 second. So let's drag that over and put it right underneath the digital pin. So now we'll wait 1 second. So go ahead and add that. Okay, now let's go back down to the Arduino section and let's grab another one of these. It says set digital pin 13 to high. We'll drag that over. This time we want to turn it off. So let's set our pin to low. And so now we're going to say set digital pin 13 output to low. So go ahead and add that. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to wait 1 more second, otherwise we won't see the off state. So click on control. Let's drag that 1 second block in and put it underneath the wait or the right low. So now we've got Arduino starts, loop forever, turn pin high or turn pin 13 on, wait 1 second, turn pin 13 off, wait 1 second, loop forever. So that should be what yours looks like. I zoomed in a little bit for you so you can see that better. It's also in the presentation. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to upload the code. So you're going to find that upload code button right here. Now, if you don't see this button, it's probably because you're not on the upload side, you're on the staging side. So for example, here versus here. So we'll just go ahead and change that so that you can see it. You should see this code here that doesn't make any sense. We'll cover that a little bit later. And then if you happen to unplug your Arduino and plug it back in, since last time we started, you are going to have to click this button right here and then reconnect it. Mine's connected, so I don't have to do that, but you'll just have to click that connect button. You will need to do that every time you unplug your Arduino and then plug it back in. But anyway, it's no big deal. If you forget to do it, it'll remind you. So let's go ahead and click this upload code button and I'll show you what it does. First thing it does is it builds the code and then it's going to upload it. And you'll notice over on your Arduino, it did some little flashing and you saw some of those lights come on. And now we've got that sketch on there where it's just flashing the LED once per second. Now, technically that probably didn't make a change because that's probably the sketch that was on there in the first place. Let's go ahead and change that so that we can see a difference. Let's change our on time to 2 seconds. So I'm going to type in 2. And let's change our off time to 0.5, so 1/2 of a second. So it's going to be on for 2 and then off for 1/2 a second. Now I'm going to go ahead and click the upload button and again we'll see it compile and then we'll watch this right over here and you'll see these LEDs flash as it uploads the code, and your LED also is going to flash because it happens to be on the same pin, but no big deal. So now we're going to see it on for 2 seconds and then it's going to go off real short and then it's going to come back on. So that's how we write our very first Blinky sketch. Now I mentioned that pin 13 also has an LED on the board that you'll see right here. So those will actually blink at the exact same time. Pin 13 is the only one that has an LED on the board. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. We now have both LEDs. So now you can go ahead and tweak that and play around with it a little bit. And if you want, you can go ahead and build multiple blocks. So for example, if we want to copy and paste that, we can do multiple blocks and stick that in. And now we can go ahead and change this and we can have very long delays and we can create a pattern. So go ahead and play around with that a little bit. After each time, make sure you click the upload button so that you can see what it looks like. Before we go on, let's take a quick minute and answer some of these questions. What happened? So what happened on yours? Did your LED blink? Did you get it to work correctly? And then why did it blink? So if you can think about this, why did the LED turn on and off based on what we did? And then the last question, did you make something different? And if so, what did you make? And I really encourage you to go and explore and try to do different things with your code and play around with that. So take a minute, answer a few of those questions, and we'll circle back around on this next time we get together. Let's take a minute and just go through this code, and I'll explain a little bit on how the blocks are being translated into code that gets written up to the microcontroller. So if you remember, right below this upload code button, you saw a bunch of code. Now I took the comments out just to make it a little bit easier, but what happens is as you drag and drop blocks on, it automatically creates this code for you. Now we'll see this code a little bit later because we're going to write a little bit of it ourselves. So the first thing is it says when Arduino Uno, now this was a picture from when I was using the Nano, but yours says Uno, starts up. It's going to go ahead and create this function right here. This is that startup function. Now you'll notice it says pin mode 13 output. It knows that we're going to use digital pin, so it's 13. So it's going to tell it that we're going to write to it as opposed to read to it. And we'll see the read here in a minute when we use our switch. Then we're going to use this forever loop, as I mentioned earlier. And that's going to put this block right here in. So it's going to loop forever. And it's going to go forever and ever and ever, and it's never ever going to stop. And then we said set digital pin 13 to high. So what it did is it said, all right, we're going to write digital write 13 to true. True is equal to high in this language. And then we're going to say wait 1 second. So it's going to do a delay 1 times 1,000. Now the reason it does this is because the microcontroller works in milliseconds, 1,000th of a second. So for us to wait 1 second, we need to say 1 times 1,000. Now if you remember, I changed mine to 2, so the code would say 2 times 1,000. Then we're going to go into the third block here, which is set digital pin 13 to low, which translates into digital write 13 to false. So that's going to turn our LED off, and then wait 1 second, and then we changed ours to 0.5 seconds. So this is going to say delay 0.5 times 1,000, which is going to be 500 milliseconds. So anyway, that's how the code works. You can periodically check on that. If you're familiar with code, you might be interested in just learning how it builds those blocks up as we go. So anyway, that concludes our very first lesson on this. Let's go on to the next one, and we're going to blink multiple LEDs.